Have you ever stopped to think about what books are absolute essentials for you to own? I have, and here we go. Welcome back to the channel, Book Dragons. I'm really glad you're here with me. Today I'm going to talk about my list of books that are essential for me to own as part of my physical collection. You know I like to read ebooks, but there are some books that I really want to own physically. I got to thinking about this for two reasons. The first reason being that you just never know what's going to happen. If there's a fire, I'm getting out, I'm getting my kids out, I'm getting my cat out. I don't care what else I lose because it can all be replaced. People can't, right? So in a worst case scenario, I'm not going to try and rescue any of my books. And so in the event that something like that happened, I have a list of books that I would buy again to keep in my physical collection. And the other reason I was thinking about this is because my long-term goal is to live in a tiny home. Whether it's a tiny house on wheels or a van home. I don't really think I would do van life. I kind of don't think it's for me, but I would possibly entertain the idea. But one way or another, my ultimate goal is to have a small home, maybe 400 square feet at most, just for me. And if that happened, I would have to seriously pare down my book collection. So this list serves me by giving me parameters for what books I can own in a small space. You've heard me talk before about how I'm a minimalist, and so I am constantly thinking about what I actually need to be happy in life. And so, hoping that there is never a worst case scenario, I'm going to bank on the likelihood of having to pare down my collection at some point due to living in a tiny home. So this is my list of those books that I consider it essential to have in my collection. Let's go ahead and move on to this list. The first of those being a device, and that would be my Kindle. My Kindle Paperwhite is the reason that I don't need to own a lot of physical books. So no matter what happens, my Kindle will serve me for the majority of my reading needs. Alright, so that's an absolute essential. No matter what else happens, this is always going to be around for me to read off of. So now let's move on to the actual physical books, okay? And I'm going to start with Animal, Nightmare, and Shade by Chad Nicholas. These books are fantastic reads, guys. I love the covers. They are so beautifully and intricately designed, and the stories are just amazing, and I absolutely have to count these as essential books for my bookshelf. I may also own the ebooks of them, but I really hope that I can always own the physical copies as well, because they are just absolutely amazing. Alright, so the next one on this list is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern and The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Erin is my second favorite author of all time, and I absolutely have to own these beautiful books in my collection. Now, this is, of course, the illustrated collector's edition of The Night Circus, one of my prized possessions in my collection. I have a matching edition of The Starless Sea on the way, but it's not going to arrive until probably sometime this summer, is my guess, so I don't have it to show off, but my illustrated editions of The Night Circus and The Starless Sea will be staples in my collection. And I realize if something really bad happened, I would lose this particular edition because there were only so many copies of it made, but I could probably eventually get another one. It's just one of those books that I feel is essential to own a really nice copy of. Same with The Starless Sea. They are both wonderful, wonderful books. So let me get this back in there. I'm going to set all these down here. Oh, all right. All right, so a couple of nonfiction books on this list, starting with Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He was a Roman emperor and also a Stoic philosopher, and these are his musings on everyday life in the form of letters and writings, and they were eventually collected. It's kind of like a diary or a journal that he kept, and just a wonderful, wonderful, amazing book. So I will definitely be keeping a copy of this in my physical book collection. And the other book is Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer. This is kind of a daily devotional written by Wayne for each verse of the Tao Te Ching. He took a year sabbatical to travel and do nothing but study the Tao Te Ching, the writings of Lao Tzu, and he compiled his thoughts on each verse into this book. And Wayne was my introduction to philosophical Taoism, and I just absolutely love this book. It was life-changing for me. It still is life-changing for me, so I will always keep a copy of this book in my collection. All right, so these books are kind of maybes. I absolutely love them, and that is Strange the Dreamer and The Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. The Dreamer and Muse duology is such a fantastic duology. I absolutely love these books. Maybe one day I'll even own fancy illustrated copies of them, but I don't feel like that's absolutely necessary. It would be one of those situations where if somebody gifted it to me, I would totally accept it, but I don't feel like I necessarily need them, but I at least want a physical copy in my collection, and these are just beautiful. Look at the art design on these. You can tell how nice they are. Now, if something happened and I couldn't take them with me, these would probably be books that I would be willing to let go or leave behind. Maybe, just give them to my kids for their book collections, or donate to friends, or to use bookstores, things like that. So I don't know. But I really love these, and I think they would probably remain in my collection unless something drastic happened and I just couldn't take them. All right. My favorite sci-fi book of all time is Dune by Frank Herbert. This particular edition is just absolutely gorgeous, and I will always do my best to own a copy of this book in my physical book collection. This is an essential. And I would very much like to also keep in my collection Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. These books, guys, are just absolutely amazing. The illustrations on the cover are so beautiful, and I just love these books to death. I hope to collect the entire set of 6 books by Frank Herbert in these fancy deluxe editions. I'm assuming they're going to do the other 3 books in the saga, so this is a set of books that I can't not own. If I'm able to at all, these will always be in my physical book collection. I have the ebooks as well, but I have to own these physically. They are just beautiful, and they look so wonderful on my shelf, and I do read from these editions as well, guys. I'll read from the ebook too, but I will definitely read from these editions. This may seem like a no-brainer, so I'm just going to briefly touch on it. This is my first book. I mean, I can't not own a copy of my own first book, right? So Talendor's Guest I will definitely own a copy of in my library forever, I think. I don't know why I wouldn't. So that's that. The next books on this list are a little collection of books by Neil Gaiman. I plan to always have all of Neil Gaiman's books in my physical collection, but if I had to choose, if I couldn't take all my Neil Gaiman books, these are some that I would choose. I've got, well, if I can get it out here, I've got the Graveyard Book, and I love these editions because they're all illustrated by Chris Riddle, and he's just a fantastic illustrator. These are the UK trade paperbacks, I believe, so I would like to own a nice fancy special edition of the Graveyard Book. It's one of my favorite Neil Gaiman books. I like these others too, don't get me wrong, but someday I hope to own a nice edition of this. And then, of course, we have Coraline, and I do have a nice edition of Coraline on the way, so I'm just putting that out there. That one will definitely be on my physical bookshelf for all time, I think. And then, fortunately, The Milk. I really enjoyed this book, but this is one that I don't feel like I have to own physically if I'm just not able to. So, but this is a really nice little collection. Somebody got it for me off my Amazon wish list, and I just really love those books. All right. Now, in that same vein, thinking about Neil Gaiman, I've got Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. This is my illustrated edition of that book, and I love this book, guys. Good Omens is such a fun book, and I can't imagine not owning a physical copy of it. So no matter what happens, my goal is to always have this book in my physical collection. And the same goes for Stardust. Stardust is just a really awesome Neil Gaiman book. I love how fun, quirky, and fantastical it is. I mean, all of his books are really, but this is just a standout story for me. And I have a fancy special edition coming of it, so eventually I might end up donating this. My personal feeling is I really only need one copy of a book, and if I've got a really nice special edition of it, I don't necessarily need to own other copies of it. So that's just my personal opinion, my personal practice. But for right now, this is the only edition I've got, and I love it. It's the cover is really beautiful, and yeah, I will always own Stardust in my collection. The same goes for Ocean at the End of the Lane. You've heard me talk about this being my favorite book of all time. This is pinnacle Neil Gaiman right here. This is just such a fantastic book. Now, I do have an illustrated copy of this one, but they took out sentences and changed some of the wording, and I'm like, no! So, I'm showing off this one because this is my original copy of it, and until I get an unabridged version of a special edition for it, this will probably be the edition that would stay in my book collection if I had to get rid of other books. So, yeah. Alrighty, guys. So let's see what we got here. Also by Neil Gaiman. You're noticing a pattern, I think. That would be Neverwhere. This is such a neat book. One of my favorite Neil Gaiman books. This is a really nice special edition with illustrations by Chris Riddle. And I'm such a fan of Neverwhere. And there are some other really nice fancy special editions out there. There's one from Folio Society that I've had my eye on, but it's not absolutely necessary. That's one of those that if somebody gifts it to me, I definitely won't complain. But this is such a great book, and this is absolutely essential to my physical book collection. All right, guys. So now we are down to the final 3 books. And that would be The Silmarillion, The Hobbit, and The Lord of the Rings, all by J.R.R. Tolkien. I absolutely love the world of Middle-earth, and these books are just awesome. And they are beautiful additions to my collection. You see they've got the beautiful sprayed edges. They're such pretty books. And these contain the original illustrations and notes by Tolkien himself. So these editions, above all others, are the books that I would want to always have in my possession on my physical bookshelf. I do have some other illustrated editions of the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings trilogy with illustrations by Alan Lee. And while those are really nice additions, I love them, and I'm not just going to up and get rid of them. If it came down to a choice and I only had so much space, I'm going to keep these, then let go of the ones with Alan Lee's illustrations. Now, you may be watching this and thinking, Chaz, that's sacrilege. How can you let those go? You know, if I have to choose, it's going to be these. Because let's say I live in a tiny home, I'm probably not going to have a lot of room for a large bookshelf. So I'm really going to have to pare down my collection. And I'm really okay with that. I really am. That doesn't bother me at all, because I know the value of the books that I have chosen in this video. And this list may change from time to time. I get that, you know. Times change, and I may find new books that I want to add to my essentials list. But as of right now, this is them. Now, I do have one honorable mention that I'll talk about, and that would be A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. But the reason why I'm not making that official on this list yet is because I want illustrated editions. And right now, there are only standard illustrated editions for the first 3 books. A Game of Thrones, A Clash of Kings, and A Storm of Swords. Those are the only standard illustrated editions on the market right now. The Folio Society has collector's editions of all 5 books. It's a ginormous amount of money, and I just don't want to spend that much money. And the series isn't complete yet. So I'm kind of waiting until the series is complete. I know, but we're not going to go into that. It may never be complete. I get it. Hopefully one day it will be complete, and then there will be a full set of nice special editions for not too much money, because I try to be frugal with my spending on books when I can. So yeah, I'm kind of holding off on that. So that is an honorable mention. I absolutely love A Song of Ice and Fire. It is my favorite series of all time, and I can't imagine not owning a physical copy of it. But you never know what's going to happen. You never know what life is going to bring. So even with this list of essential books, it may just not ever be practical for me to own all of them. And that does make me sad, but there are more important things in life than always having all the books you want, in my personal opinion. So that's my list, guys. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to dialogue with you. Also, let me know what some of your essential books are. And until next time, make sure you're reading more books. I'll talk with you then.